Hey, it's Ryan from McCarthyMusicSchool.com, and today we're going to be talking about a skill that is so important to being a contemporary keyboard player, and it's what I was just doing, which is playing creatively and freely over a chord progression. This is an important skill to have if you're playing pop, rock, or singer-songwriter or contemporary worship music. And in today's video, I'm going to give you a couple of real specific things to practice to get better at playing in that style. And I also have a free online course I'm going to give you that's going to lay the foundation for so much of what I talk about today. So keep watching. I have a lot of great stuff to show you today. So the chord progression I'm using today is G major, D major, E minor, and C major. And so we have G major, G, B, and D, D major, D, F sharp, A, E minor, E, G, B, and C major, which is C, E, and G. And even if you just know those notes, you can really do a lot. You can just play the chords in kind of a block chord fashion where you're just hitting the chords themselves. You can arpeggiate the chords. So there's really a lot you can do with even just those notes. But if you go back and look at what I did at the beginning of the video, you'll notice I was adding notes to those chord notes. I was playing additional notes. And really knowing which notes go with which chords is really what this skill is all about. And the things I'm going to show you today are going to really help you to start to learn which notes go with which chords. So the very first skill you want to start working on is knowing which key you're playing in and which notes go in the major scale of that key. Right now I'm playing in the key of G major. So all the notes that are in the scale of G major are going to sound pretty good with all the chords I'm using. So the scale of G major is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and then G again at the top. So if you know the notes of the scale of G major, which is really the notes that are in the key of G major, then that's the first step to knowing which notes are going to sound good with these chords. And maybe you know a few major scales, or you kind of know something about major scales, but you don't know as much as you'd like to know. Well, I actually have a free online course that I'd like to give you today that teaches all about major scales. It's called Mastering Major Scales. And in it, I actually talk about how to construct a major scale. I actually give you the building blocks for how to build a major scale on any note on the piano. And then I go through all 12 major scales and I show you which notes are in the scales, and I give you fingerings and practice suggestions so you can practice them and memorize them and learn them and be able to start utilizing them in your own playing. And you can find this completely for free at McCarthyMusicSchool.com/major scales. So go there and get the course absolutely free, and it'll really help you to be able to start playing freely and creatively. It'll really lay the foundation for being able to do everything I talk about in this video. So that's the first skill, is to be able to play the major scale of whatever key you're in, and also to be able to learn all 12 major scales so that you can play in any key freely and creatively. The next thing I want you to do is to start adding two to the chords that you're playing. Now let me show you what I mean by that. Adding two is to add the note that is a second above the root of whatever chord you're playing in the scale of the key that you're playing in. So we're in the key of G major. So if I play a G chord, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the note that is right above the root. The root is the note that the chord is named after. So in this case, G is the root of the G major chord. So I'm going to add the note that is above the root, the next note up in the scale. So that note is an A in this case. It's not A flat because that note is not in the scale of G major. So in G major, the next note up is A. So I'm going to add A. So instead of just playing G, B, and D, I'm now going to add an A note to those chord notes. Watch this. So all I did was to start playing an A in addition to the chord notes, and instantly it changes the feel. It gives it a shimmering quality. It gives it a little bit more sophistication. This is one of my favorite things to do when I'm playing chords like this. Let's take a look at the D chord. So here's D, D, F sharp, and A. Now in the key of G major, I'm going to go up a note above the root. The root is D. So here we have E. E is the 2 of the D major chord. So let's hear what that sounds like. So it's that same kind of sound, right? Let's look at E minor. Now, the note that is above E, E is the root of E minor. The next note up, you might be tempted to play F natural because it's the next white key. But in the key of G major, it's actually not F, it's actually F sharp because F is sharped in the key of G major. That's why it's so important to know your major scales so that you know, okay, the next note up is not F, it's actually F sharp. And that same kind of idea applies to all the different scales. So learning your scales is really important to being able to add the 2 to these chords. So now we have E minor with an F sharp. Kind of has a haunting quality to it. I really love that. Now let's look at C major. The next note up is D, that's the 2. Here's a C, add 2. So now let's go through the whole progression. So all I'm doing is adding that 2 note to all of those chords, and instantly it just sounds totally different, a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more heightened, just a little bit more interesting. So this week, start practicing adding 2 to the chords that you play. You know, sometimes it might sound better than others. That's okay. If it doesn't sound good, don't do it. But that's just part of experimentation and seeing what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. And the thing that's going to really help with that is to be able to know what your major scales are, which notes go in which major scales. And to help you with that, please check out my free online course, Mastering Major Scales, at mccarthymusicschool.com/major scales. That's going to really be helpful to you. Otherwise, keep playing, keep practicing, keep experimenting, and I'll see you in the next video.